A performance measurement framework is a critical component of strategy implementation. In this video, we'll explore how to set up KPIs, ensure data consistency, analyze performance, and drive continuous improvement. Hello, my name is Alexis. I'm CEO at BSC Designer, the platform for strategy execution. And in this video, we're going to talk about our performance measurement framework, the set of steps, recommendations that we suggest companies to follow to set up a good, reliable, and most importantly, the framework that is focused on achieving tangible business results, tangible business outcomes. So as you can see, we're going to use this article and specifically this diagram to get us oriented in what we're talking about and what step we are discussing. So the first step is the definition of business context. Why it's important? It's actually one of the biggest mistakes people make when they set up performance measurement frameworks, when they're trying to measure something. They find some nice metric and it's like interesting metric, and they're trying to to measure it, to get data for it, to put it on dashboard, things like this. There is nothing bad about this, but if there is no business context behind, this will be a pure measurement exercise. You're investing your time in measuring things, but most likely this will not drive any tangible business outcomes. I will illustrate this with an example. You see here one of the scorecards that we're going to use in this video. It's a scorecard for quality assurance, and I am showing you a random metric, which is top performers turnover measured in percentage. So the question is, why we're measuring it? The metric itself is clear. Turnover rate, the percentage of people who leave the company compared to total headcount. The question is why we're measuring it. Yeah, it's one of the metrics that you typically see on HR scorecard, and you can get data for it. And without the context, I'm not showing the context right away. Without the context, it's not clear. And it's not clear what measurement method should we use. It's not clear how often we should track it. And it's not clear how we should use the results, which is more important. And I'm scrolling up, and you see the goal behind this metric. This goal is a maintainable product, to keep your product maintainable. Now it makes a perfect sense. So if we're talking quality scorecard, we're talking about quality. One of aspect of quality is how fast we fix the problems, how good we are in maintaining the product. And one of the success factors for this is actually keeping knowledge about your product inside your company. And knowledge, basically, we can write down something in the knowledge base, but most of the knowledge is inside the hands and heads of key people. So now this metrics makes much better sense, and we know how to measure it, and what is more important, we know how to use the results. So just a small demonstration of how business context is important. How to define a business context? Fortunately, if I scroll down in the same article, I will find this diagram. It is from our strategy implementation system. You will certainly find it on our website, which defines several steps for the definition of business context in general, like for all your strategy. It starts with a mission and vision, the strategic ambitions of the stakeholders and explains how to cascade them to the level of scorecards and then to the level of specific objectives, and later decompose those objectives into uh, KPIs, initiatives, and risks. Yeah. So that's what you do on the level of strategy. And if you do it right, the measurement system actually it's this part, the metrics part. Uh, it will be much easier to define it. Yeah. So we don't talk a lot about this, and let's go to the step two: setting up KPIs. Uh, for setting up KPI, there are different directions that we need to follow. I'm listing them here, and the first direction is idea generation. Um, when we face certain business challenge, certain uh, problem that we want to deal with in our strategy, we need to find a good metric to quantify it and how to do it. Well, it depends. It depends on the challenge. Sometimes it's obvious what metric we can use. Like in this case, if the challenge is to keep product maintainable, it was not that hard to come up with this indicator. Sometimes the challenge is more important and it's difficult to solve. In this case, in the same article, you have a link to the KPI system, which basically explains how to approach it. So it suggests you different tools that you can use to organize your ideas about metrics, about KPIs. If you prefer the read paper version of this, the book 10-step KPI system, uh, where we discuss it in more detail. Um, and the step that we started recommended this year uh, is the use of AI. For example, in this scorecard, you have AI tab, you can stop chart, and the benefit of this approach is that AI knows about your strategy, your scorecards. It knows about your existing goals and KPIs, and it knows about general strategy information about your company. So start dialogue with AI. The results are not perfect yet, but sometimes it generates some insights that were not that obvious before. So these are the tools that we recommend for this stage, for the stage of idea generation. And then we're talking about technical setup of the metric. In terms of technical setup, we do some basic things like defining its name, description. Uh, in the tool, if you're using a platform, you do it here on the general tab, name, description, measurement units. What is also critical is to define the ownership for this indicator. Who should receive notification is something has happened to this indicator. That's one question that we need to answer and select owner here. And another question that we also need to answer, and it resonates a lot with the definition of business context, is who are the stakeholders? Who is interested in measuring this indicator? Again, if we define it, then we can track it back to the business context. We are measuring this indicator because of we think that this metric will help us to maintain product. Yeah? So understanding the stakeholders and their interests is always critical. Sometimes it's obvious, like in this case, so no need to map it, but in some cases, it's better to map the stakeholders that stand behind this. We're going to the next, which on this diagram, next step is marked as normalization and performance function. What is normalization? Mm, See here, I have this metric, which is measured in percentages. And I also have here, for example, this metric, cost of poor quality, which is supposed to be in dollars. And I see it, yes, it's in dollars. And I also have a risk metric, which is other measurement units, like it's measured in probability and percentages, and impact can be measured in whatever we want. And there are also time metrics that are measured in this case in days. So we cannot compare days to dollars to percentage. They're not comparable. So to do this, to make them comparable, we need to normalize them. How we do that? For each indicator, we define the baseline and the target. So we define the measurement scale. And knowing the baseline, knowing the target, knowing the value, we can convert it, we can normalize it, we can convert it into percentage using this performance measurement function. This one is a complicated one, but most of the performance measurement functions, they will be linear one. In this case, for top performers, it's minimization. So we want to minimize the turnover among the top performers. Yeah, I can see this function. What happens with this function? What happens with this normalization? The main reason we do it, we calculate the progress according to this indicator, and we also normalize it, and we make it comparable to other indicators. So that's another step, important step of the setup of the indicator. The next step here is data consistency, ensuring data consistency and traceability. What it is all about. If we want to do performance measurement in a disciplined way, we need to follow certain rules. Yeah? If we don't follow rules, we'll create a mess. Yeah? If I track some indicator in January, February, and then I forget to update it, and then I track it again, and then my boss asks me for aggregated data, I do this report, but it won't make sense because we broke several rules. We have not updated this indicator in some of the months. We use different ways to measure it. We probably tweak some data, updated some targets. There are no rules. So we need to follow rules. And what kind of rules are these? The first and probably most used rule is how often we want to update this indicator. Yeah, because we need to have a structure for this. We need to have a rule for this. For this, in our platform, we offer this via this dialog values editor. You have update interval. And you see this indicator is configured to be updated on the first day of the month. And I have data here. And what if I will change? I will say, no, I will update it quarterly. You see some dates become red. The platform tells me, no, you cannot do this. You cannot do this. This data is not valid for this interval. So you need to manage it in some way, and that's perfectly fine. The platform should help us to maintain our performance data consistent. What else about consistency? Value inheritance. We have it here. Data inheritance. Behavior for periods without specific data. Think about two indicators, sales data and customer engagement. You have data for January, but you don't have data for February. So the question is, if you don't have data for February, what data should be used if someone asks you for a report for February? That's a good question, because if you're talking about sales indicator, then you need to be specific about sales in February, and you need to say no, there were no sales in February. But if we're talking about customer engagement, that's more flexible. Yeah, You don't normally measure customer engagement every month or customer satisfaction, because if you're using surveys, they take time, they take resources. So typically you do it like quarterly or annually. So you don't then measure them constantly. In this case, for the period when you don't have data, you need to decide what data you want to be there. Should it be used specifically entry values like for sales indicators, or for some cases, the data should be inherited from the previously available periods. So that's another way to maintain your scorecard, your performance measurement system consistent. Yeah. You need to be specific about what indicators, how they behave in these cases. Another case is about data grouping. So imagine again the same indicators, sales and customer engagement. And now someone asks you, give me an aggregated data for Q1 or Q2. And for sales, you most likely will use this option. You will generate report that will sum sales month by month. For customer satisfaction and customer engagement, it won't make sense. Yeah, if it's 90% plus 90%, 180, no. You will need to have it an average. Yeah, but again, you need to define what kind of grouping type this indicator requires. Yeah. So these are basic rules that we define for managing these indicators. What rules? What else do we need? We also need some rules for how this indicator is measured. Yeah, we defined them before when we defined the measurement unit, and we also have description field where we can explain more details about how exactly we measure the indicator. Let's go to the next step, where we need to ensure data traceability. What traceability is about is ability to trace. Trace what? Basically, we want to trace everything related to this indicator. I want to know who created this indicator. I want to know who entered this target. And if it was changed, I want to know about this as well. Because it helps to make sure that people are not changing data without leaving a footprint. In our platform, you go to history of changes here on the context tab, and it's available for all items, all initiatives, all goals. If you're using spreadsheets, it might be a challenge to track it, but anyway, that's our aspirations. That's what we want to have ideally in our performance measurement framework. The last block in this setting up KPIs. This one is about maintaining the structure of KPIs, because one metric, one KPI is not enough. Yeah, obviously, you will have a number of them, and as we discussed here, these metrics should be in certain context. So combining the context, combining multiple metrics, we create a scorecard. Like in this case, this metric, they belong to this goal. Inside this goal, I have other metrics, and all these goals contribute to their perspectives and finally to the our scorecards. Again, in the platform, it's easier to organize them. You just create this hierarchy. You can drag and drop, copy and paste. If you use a spreadsheet, it might be more challenging. But anyway, that's the idea, that we want to not just create a list of metrics, but we want ideally to have a hierarchy of the metrics aligned with the goals, aligned with initiatives, to understand how we are performing. And when we do so, we have certain benefits of organizing metrics into the hierarchy. First of all, we define the connection between the metrics. Yeah. So right now I can see it visually that these two indicators are contributing to this goal. So that's one way to define the connection. I can also, for example, I can use this copy and paste. And the platform suggests me to link these two by data or by context. And I can also use this hierarchy to define the contextual connection between these items. That's what I can do as well. Um, another important thing is that um, the metrics, they impact the goal they align with in a different way. There are leading metrics. I can recognize them by this green rectangle and by this leading option here. And there are lagging metrics, like, for example, this turnover rate that we discussed before. What's the difference? The leading metrics are typically aligned with success factors. So something that we do to ensure the achievement of the goal. And the lagging metrics, they quantify the expected results, like in this case. Yeah. So with a combination of these type of the metrics, we can create a scorecard where you can track both our efforts. Typically, it's a leading metric, and we can quantify the results. Typically, it's a lagging metric. Yeah. There are nuances about how this all is calculated. That lagging performance is actually translated to the higher levels, and leading performance stays on the same level. It's converted through this metric, through this goal, into lagging performance. All this is important. What is critical is to make sure that we understand the difference between two types of indicators and reflect this difference in our scorecard and how it's calculated. And another benefit, the final one, of organizing KPIs into the hierarchy is that actually we can, let me switch to a different view here to impact. Actually, we can track the weight of each indicator. It's not applicable in all of the cases. It doesn't make business sense in all of the cases to track the weight, but in some cases, like in this case, complexity index, for example, index indicators, it makes a perfect sense to assign different weights. I see in this column the weights of the indicators are different and that are defined here on this column, this field. So we assigned different weights to these indicators to tell to our performance measurement system that different indicators impact the index indicator in a different way. In this case, we're measuring complexity and we gave the excessive timing the highest weight. If you, for example, measure the number of quality problems, you might give a higher weight to the critical problems and lower weight, respectively, to minor problems. So that's what we do. That's what we do when we organize metrics into the hierarchy. That's it. That's the second step for setting up the technical setup for KPIs. Now, if we did the first step, the context step, and the setup step correctly, the rest will be quite easy to do. Plan and track. What planning is about? Basically, planning is about setting targets. And if you use spreadsheets, normally you will just set one target per indicator for your all reporting period, typically a null period. And that's it. You can do it in our platform. You select the date in the calendar and you put your target here and you're fine. But sometimes it's not what you want to track. Sometimes what you want to track is how the indicator is changing gradually. Yeah. So you define, like, think about our percentage of trained employees. You don't train all employees at once. You typically train like 30% first month, 30% next month, and 40% in the last month. So basically, you have different targets for different periods, and it's a little different, the definition for targets for this indicator. With our platform, you have this option to define different targets for different dates. There are many nuances about this, and for example, sometimes you need to define a target as a change percentage. Like we want to grow sales by 10% next quarter. Yeah, this by 10%. All these nuances we discuss in one of the videos that we have on the platform. You can actually access these videos using this icon and all the tools, all the parts of the interface. So just to mention that you have these two options: set a target for one date, like you typically do in spreadsheets, or set more granular target, gradual target for different periods. Yeah. Um, then we have tracking. Yeah, so we plan the target and now we need to track it. Tracking basically it's about updating the metric with the fresh data. If you do it manually, you select the date in the calendar and you put a new value here, or you can connect this metric to some data source and automate connection, or import data from spreadsheet if you're collecting data there. Besides basically entering data in your scorecard, you also need to calculate this data, the performance. If you do it with our platform, you calculate it automatically, including all this weighting. If you're doing it in a spreadsheet, you should set up formula and make sure the formula is correct and not broken. But again, it's these days we don't do it manually. Everything is calculated automatically. Analyzing performance. How we do it? Well, it depends on what kind of insight we're looking for. In most of the cases, we open a scorecard, we probably change the view like I did to actual, and we start looking at how things are going. I have a plenty of data here. I have a current progress. I have these stop lights. This one is green, and some of them are in a yellow sector. Uh, and I also have this dynamic, so I can see how this metric is changing compared to the previous known state. Yeah. I can also switch to dashboards to get a visual picture of how we're doing. Yeah. With the most important metrics, I see how things are doing. I can visualize here trends. I can see different metrics. Most of them are in green zone. Okay. If I prefer to use a business context as a starting point, I can visualize it on a strategy map, yeah, which is created automatically. Again, I can see how we're performing. I can see that most of them are in green zone. I can visualize here if I want stoplights. So another way to read it. If we need something more advanced, we go to Analysis tab, where we have all the same metrics. We can sort them by biggest gain lost. We can forecast. We can find the metrics that has the highest impact on the scorecard because of its weight. We can do more specific analysis. Yeah, and if we want to do even more specific analysis, like detect some anomalies or find some correlations. In this case, we can switch to AI tab and ask AI to basically do this analysis for us. We have an article about analytical methods where we share specific prompts for AI that you can use for various types of analysis and to organize them, to organize the results of this analysis. So that's the fourth step, the performance analysis. And last but not least, continuous improvement. For this step, I would remind you what is called Coulter's law. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. That happens when we find some metric, some good metric, and then we are start punishing someone because the metric is in the red zone. So, or in a worst case, we can also align the compensation of a person with the performance of this metric. Believe me, there is no unbreakable metric. So practice showed that any metric, if managed in this way, uh, if we convert it in a target for a person, then the person will certainly find a way to manipulate it, to game it, to call it whatever. We have actually an article that where we collect many examples of such undesired behavior, and it's not just on small scale, on scale of one person, it's also on the scale of organizations. Such unexpected behavior that these bad practices are inducing. So, what is the best practice in this case? Best practice is to use the performance indicators to basically improve how you are doing the things. So if we are talking about my internal product, you don't punish people for because this indicator in the red zone, it's not. But anyway, imagine like this one, you don't punish people for this, but you want to hear their opinions, why it happens so, and what can we do, what corrective actions can you introduce. Probably you will hear that this indicator is not the best indicator for this business context, and it's also valuable information. Probably you will uh, start discussion that will lead you to reinventing the goal that stands behind these metrics, and it's really, really valuable. Um, that's conceptual explanation of how you should do it. You should not punish people, but to map observation and map corrective actions. In practice, it's just pick the metric, pick the reporting period, and click comment button, write your comment. You can also continue discussions here, different persons sharing their opinion, things like this. It's also valuable to not just keep it on operational level, but also engage senior stakeholders. They most likely they will not go to your scorecard directly, but they would prefer to have some aggregated data from the scorecard. In this case, you have reports where you create a required report, probably with the same data, a little bit more aggregated, with same insights, comments, corrective actions to explain how you plan to improve, what challenges you was working on, and what challenges you will be working on in the next reporting period. So these are the 5 steps for defining performance measurement system. Uh, Most likely, if you're looking for automation of these, most likely you have it in such scorecard as Excel spreadsheets. And we have an article where we discuss in more details how to survive in Excel spreadsheets and when it's time actually to move to specialized platform like BSC Designer. And also on our platform, you'll find many cases, many applications of such performance measurement approach for different business domains. It's not just tracking quality, obviously, like in the case we use for this example. It's also for different evaluation, different assessments. It's also for monitoring strategies, obviously, for monitoring physical and virtual assets, like required, for example, for disaster recovery. It's measuring intangible things like leadership, governance. That's basically where we need to apply our skills for finding great KPIs. It's also for some boring things like establishing controls, something that we use there is times something that need to include the knowledge that we want to apply to similar cases. Uh, of course, a lot of different applications areas where performance measurement can help us. So I would recommend you to sign up with our platform with the free plan to give it a try to set up your performance measurement framework there. And should you have some questions, some comments, some insight that you want to share, feel free to comment below this video. We are always happy to hear what you think and always happy to share our perspective. Thank you. Thank you for watching